Tell me about your agency.
I serve attorneys and I serve paralegals. Basically, I also have an attorney that I just hired who is handling all my audits. So we also do 10 cases per month where we audit, your file. So the goal behind that is I'm training you. I am putting my sweat and tears. This material didn't come easy. This material came from over $100,000 worth of books over the years, 18 years worth of mistakes and things that I've done that I have refined, liquid gold knowledge from just the best in the industry that they don't look, I'm not a threat. What am I? I'm just a young girl who wants to learn. So they're willing to teach me. And when I say I'm just so thankful and grateful to have been in certain rooms and been able to, and had calls one-on-one with really predominant attorneys in the area. So what I'm saying is I took all that knowledge and I liquidated it into this program. So how I feel is that after I'll audit cases and 10 cases a month for the first 3 months. I understand all things that I'm finding are things from the past, right? However, when I get to that 4th and 5th month, I'm starting to look at some newer cases, and I'm hoping to see that you're using everything that I've been teaching. And that's why I extended it to 12 months, because the goal would be for firms to really make sure that they're listening. And if they're not, at that point, I go back to the personality assessments that I take, and I see, okay, is this person possibly good for this position? Do we possibly need to have more one-on-one training with this person? Then I start to ask, what is it that you want to do in the next 5 years? What is it that you're passionate about? When I sit down and I ask, staff, paralegals, these questions, I can really start to pick out whether this person even wants to be in this position. But the goal is to help them and to nurture them as if they were, just my friends, that I just want to see grow and do really good in this industry. Mm-hmm. But the people that I generally speak to the most would be obviously the managing partners, giving them, what my program details, and I send them trainings once a month, and then I audit 10 cases a month. And generally they reach out if they have cases that they want me to audit outside of those 10 cases. So they may have a few $1 million cases, and they say, okay, look, I want to know, what can we get out of this, or what did we do wrong in this case? And I kind of point out, one of the biggest mistakes I see a lot is going to be the T-bone accident, where they won't have a thoracic MRI anywhere. Studies show that a common injury in a T-bone accident is going to be your thoracic, spine. So the goal, especially if I see a lot of cervical herniations going on and it's at C7, I'm like, okay, there has to be C7, T1. I'm like, there has to be more down there. So, just pointing that out, calling the doctor, not telling the doctor what to do, but just asking, hey doc, I see here that, we went this route. I've seen some studies that, a lot of times the thoracic might be a better angle to look at, and the client is going to have a lot of issues there. A lot of times before I call the doctor, I will tell the client, hey, do you feel pain, in these 3 fingers, which is, will signify some cervical herniations? Are you feeling bandwidth pain down here? Are you feeling numbness, tingling in your legs? And trying to explain to them what radiculopathy is. And then, getting the doctor to make, 1 + 1 = 2, let's order the MRI. But if it doesn't happen at that point, I do recommend for law firms to call and just ask the client. That's what we did in the olden days. Back when, when the attorneys that were practicing for 30, 40 years, they would pay for a 15-minute, 30-minute call, spend $300 expense to the case for the doctor, and just talk to the doctor about the case. They don't do that anymore. So I just recommend, hey, just call the doctor's office, see what they're working through. 9 times out of 10, they'll go ahead and order it.
Wow. Well, that's incredible. So, yeah, that's a ton of value, and you're just going to train up these individuals just to extend the value. And I would imagine, too, that then you could build relationships with other firms. There could be some recruiting scenarios in the long term, in the big picture, just because of these relationships you build. And that is rare, right? Picking up the phone and going the extra mile and having those conversations. So, a couple other things.
But
You talked about the
Chris,
yeah.
interrupt you. I will say that one thing could make you an additional $100,000 on a case. Just that one, just 15, 20 minutes out of your day. It's just not that hard. There's times where I've picked up the phone just to call a doctor. I have a famous 3-way split letter where I say where the medicals are way over. Let's say your medicals are $160,000 and your case was only $50,000. And how do you settle a case like that? I have a famous letter that I've sent out that generally gets the doctors to accept it with under the third of the case. And generally with that letter, you have to pick up the phone. You have to call because you have to explain why you're doing this, and then creating a relationship with that doctor. Hey, look, the next 4 cases all yours. I really need your help on this one. It's creating that brotherhood relationship with the doctors. And a lot of states, they don't have. Virginia, they don't have good relationships with their doctors. There's just certain, North Carolina, some areas they just don't. Florida, I recommend. Florida's pretty good. Georgia is iffy, depending on the area. You're not Georgia. Oh, Georgia's pretty good. I'm sorry. Texas is iffy. Florida's great. So it just depends on where you are in that area. I can guarantee you that if in North Carolina, it's really rare that I see MRIs on a lot of their cases, and it becomes a point where you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, there's something here between you and the doctors. No one's communicating with each other. You can tell it by looking at the file. And they're like, oh, yeah, well, they don't want to be called experts. I don't know what the issue is in some of these states. But I'm like, whatever it is, you got to fix it. You have to, take someone out to lunch, sit down and talk to them, figure out what's going on, and make sure that you guys are on the same page.
Such a great piece of advice, and getting on the same page, communicating. No, I appreciate this. This is insight that you normally don't hear. You're going very deep, but for the audience that is listening, that's keyed up, like they're getting a ton of value from this, that are experiencing this for free, right? And if you're capturing, let's say 10% of this of these tips, and you want to go deeper with Stephanie, you'll have to reach out, and we'll include all the contact information on how to get a hold of her. A couple other things, just quick hitters. You mentioned data. Are you Salesforce, Litify? What's like your top that you see, and then personality assessments. So you looking at DISC, predictive index. You looking at Colby. Just a couple quick hitters on insights into a couple of those areas.
Great. So sure. For CMSs, Litify is Salesforce, right? Because it's on the Salesforce platform.
Right.
So I do love anything on the Salesforce platform. The company is worth $160 billion, and I see why, right? Because they've created analytics that is just tier with Google. I mean, they're just spot on. You can create a report for anything you want. You go to Falvine, you go to Clio. I didn't want to mention Clio. You mentioned some of the other companies that you go to, and it's limited. Needles, they're limited in the things that you can do in them. If you send Needles an email, hey, can you add this feature? Unfortunately, we can't do that at this point. When we do another update, we'll update. Salesforce, any software on Salesforce, you want to update, you can have that updated today. And it could just be in there, custom for you. So I am 100% for Salesforce. I just think the other softwares are out of their league at this point. Needles is a nice system. Falvine is okay. There's a new one called Cloud Lex, which is on Microsoft. I'm not really feeling that one too much. There's a Practice Panther. I've seen that one. My favorite really is just going to be any software on. There's at least 5 to 6 that you could choose from. With personality assessments, I'm huge on DISC. I think one of the best personalities to have as a case manager is going to be like an SI or an S. If you have a DI, which is more of a dominant personality, I think that's going to be that's going to be better for litigation than case management work. You really want someone who's supportive, agreeable, and charming, but also still humble enough to take advice. And because it's a changing world, litigation is a little bit, you can be more stringent and rigid there, but you cannot. You have to be very fluid, have a good personality when it comes to be an extrovert. I also 16 types is one of my favorite. It helps me determine whether or not a person is trying to trick me when they're taking DISC and they're taking the Ocean 5 along with the 16 types, because I can tell whether or not a person's truly an introvert based off of what I'm seeing from the different exams. So I really like Ocean 5 because it tells me whether a person has stable emotional stability, if they're good with change, if they're on the sliding scale, where are they with their introvert, extrovert, and I love communication. Communication is one because I like to see how people like to receive and how they get information. So a lot of those exams will tell me if a person has a problem with understanding written or visual communication, if this person is, if they pick up on subtlety on cues, if they can read the room. That is something that I need to know on the front end. So that's why I always do personality tests first. And then if I do get a personality assessment that's kind of, I'm like, okay, I don't know.
So no CDs, no DCs, no straight Ds. No. Probably not the best in that relationship side. They might be good project managers in terms of overseeing the people in terms of processes, but dealing with the client.
No.
No. Yeah, and what about ID? That's pretty common. Would that could potentially be a good or
ID,
or?
I honestly, I haven't had many IDs come out. I have had one, and it was surprising, but no one would hire her because I also have done a lot of hiring and recruiting, as you mentioned before, and that was because I have a lot of connections. So generally, it was a lot easier for me to find people because people were sending me their resumes a lot. So I will say that I had one girl, and I loved her so much. I thought she was so good, and that was her personality assessment, and everyone passed up on her. And I was like, this girl's worth around 70, 80. She's going to do really well. I kept telling everyone. They were just like, yeah, Stephanie, but that's a whole part of the consulting. I'm telling you guys, this is what I know. And she finally got a job elsewhere. She's still there, and they offered her 85. And I knew it. I was like, I knew who you were. But, no one would take a chance on her because they thought that her personality was too overpowering.
Yep. Yeah, we got really deep in the weeds there, but yeah. So I love DISC. I love the different personality assessments. They're amazing in hiring.
Did you try 16 types?
I haven't. I'm going to check that out.
Yeah.
I'm going to check that out next.